everybody! Doesn't it feel like Wednesday? But it's just Tuesday. And in fact, Daredevil is on this evening, and hopefully more people tune in. Thank you, Danny. That's right, it's the first live stream of the week, which means it's time for me to gift some memberships as well. Hold on, let me gift my 5 memberships of the week. Hold on, here they come. Just my way of saying thank you for being a member of the community and for everyone's generosity all the time. Here they go. Woohoo! Okay. Thank you so much. If you get a gifted membership, it's good for 1 month. And I'm trying to have a little bit more subscriber streams as well. I also have updated the top tier of BTT membership to now BTT Insider, where in the last Sunday of each month, I'm going to do a behind-the-scenes Q&A with members at that level, alternating between before movie math or after movie math, so that people at different time zones can join in. I'm still trying to figure out what to do with that higher level of the membership. I liked doing Movie Club, but Movie Club didn't work out so well as a video. So just trying to figure it out. Daredevil's actually this evening. I don't care. I don't care, Bear. It's tonight. So that's just a couple of changes that are going on. So we have 3 excellent stories to go over today, and actually they're all going to be quite in depth. So buckle up. Thanks, Dancing Dog 60. Buckle up. It's going to be quite a discussion. I'm excited. Okay, all right. So, and of course, as always, at the end of the live stream, you can ask me anything that you would like. All right, so story number 1. Hold on. Boop. Okay, Daredevil. Oh, low ratings. This came out yesterday. That's right, here we boop. 7.5 million views on Disney Plus for the first 5 days. They don't, it's all over the place. Sometimes they renounce after 5 days, sometimes after 7 days. You don't get, it's not exactly Agatha was counting for 9 days, but I'd be surprised if Daredevil Born Again closed the gap in 2 days. It's interesting, the Dragon, that you say that you didn't watch it. Let's do a poll. Everybody loves a poll. Are you watching Daredevil? Because you can see it for a little bit later on in our discussion, but every single person that I've spoken to keeps telling me they're going to get to it, and they have yet to get to it. Are you watching Daredevil Born Again? So yes, on Tuesdays. Yes, week of release. And then I'm gonna get to it. And then the next is skipping this one. Okay, I can only have 4 options. All right, so of course, anybody who's watching can vote. You don't have to be a member to vote in a poll. Anyone can go on there and click. So, yes, Agatha. One of the headlines said that it was less than the debut of Agatha All Along, although, of course, it's, 5 to 7 days. But still, I think the reason that some of us are kind of happy about this is because some people were just so mean about Agatha. And they were like, nobody wants to watch Agatha. Who cares about Agatha? What a waste of time. And everybody was really mean about it. So the fact that, Agatha did better, I think is, very rewarding to those of us who were like, dude, if you don't like it, don't watch it. But you don't have to say bad stuff about it. So yes, so it did better. Everybody was very mean to Agatha. And then Agatha did better. So yes, but everybody did better. Almost everyone did better. So here are some comparisons. Loki Season 2 debuted with 10.9. I mean, you got to watch the language on these things. When the announcement came out about this Daredevil viewership, they were like, the biggest Disney Plus debut of the year. And you're like, it's only the beginning of March. And they're like, shut up. All right, so then the Acolyte had a bigger debut. That's amazing to me. That the Acolyte would do better. I guess people were hate watching it. They were getting ready to make some money with the hate watching, but still bigger viewership. Percy Jackson, which show that hardly anybody talks about, but apparently watches, did better. Now, The Penguin is a pretty good comparison because they're both very, let's say male-oriented shows, right? They're both very gritty. They're both about the city, right? Like, oh, look at the just like regular dudes to some degree. Like, I will agree. I do think that Ready Revolutionary, The Penguin, is a better show. And part of me wonders if The Penguin hurt Daredevil because this is like a HBO show, and I think Daredevil plays a lot like network television. Like if it was airing on ABC or CBS, which is very jarring for fans. But nobody really watched Penguin either. I mean, Penguin only has 5.3 million views, and that was rough. Now, a comparison that Disney put out themselves was that this was a little higher than Paradise. Paradise is a successful show for Hulu. It's already been renewed for season 2, yet it debuted with just 7 million. So when we ask ourselves, what are the chances of Daredevil being able to chart on Nielsen, I think it's pretty good. Paradise, we've been talking about how high up Paradise is on the originals chart. It still doesn't get on the overall chart. Marco, if you haven't watched Paradise, this is a great show. This is a show on Hulu. It's a really good kind of like Lost, it's a great show. I highly recommend it. It's doing very well. But, very well for Hulu is not so great for Disney Plus, which is interesting. I still think it's ridiculous that they put them in the same bag and shook them up. Every time I go into the Disney Plus interface, I'm like, get this Hulu stuff out of here. And I like the Hulu stuff, but I don't want it on my Disney Plus interface. It drives me crazy. Every time, I'm like, you're ruining the vibe of the whole reason I logged into Disney Plus, which was to feel very cozy. All right, so, Danny, I don't think the Penguin numbers are split with cable because these numbers were reported themselves by HBO. I'm not reporting Nielsen numbers there. All right, so as I said, don't worry, Zeke, we're going to talk about that. So as I said, a lot of people that I've spoken to, they swear they're going to get to it, but they haven't gotten to it yet. Somebody I was talking to just the other day was like, I'm going to wait till the weekend to watch it. And I was like, but today is Monday, and you still haven't watched last week's episode. The next episode is on tomorrow night. And they're like, I'm going to get to it. I'm, whatever, Like, and people who are big Marvel fans, right? I mean, they're just, and people who would definitely usually watch this stuff. Like these people, the people I've spoken to about this weren't like turning off from Marvel. They saw Captain America Brave New World in theaters, but they were like, I'll get to it. And I think that's, really not great for the show. Now, the question is, are the ratings going to go up or are they going to go down? My guess is they're going to go down. As we're going to talk about in just a few moments, but I'll just touch on here, I don't think that Daredevil is a show that's designed to get people's attention. It had that big fancy opening, that big splashy opening with its debut, but let's see what happens when it starts going week to week. If, like, say, when Punisher shows up, if that can raise the numbers a little bit, well, that's going to just be better for Punisher's future. That could really help that character. Because as some of you are asking, what about let's see here, Heinz E. Adventure says, I think because of all 9 episodes coming out, there are a lot of spoilers on YouTube pages and people have lost favor with the show because of it. I don't know where you guys are seeing these spoilers. I haven't seen any of the spoilers. I haven't seen them in my feed. I haven't seen them coming up. I was surprised that Disney released the entire season. And that's interesting. I mean, I haven't really seen them on Twitter very much, apparently they're bad spoilers, or the spoilers that, like, nothing really happens on the show. But that's interesting. So other characters, all right? So, of course, everybody's wondering, what about these recent headlines, right? Thomas says, YouTube is full of spoilers. Really? Most of the channels that I check in on have not aired any spoilers. Is it like conservative channels trying to like undercut the show? That's really that's crazy. Okay, so Marvel, they said they were going to explore bringing back some of the Marvel Netflix characters. And then also they did announce they were going to do a John Bernthal Punisher special, aka maybe a movie, and that's going to be directed by the guy who did King Richard and the Bob Marley movie. And so people thought that was very exciting. But if these ratings don't improve, I think there is a chance that they won't continue with these things. These people are particularly cooked because this wasn't even guaranteed. But as for this movie, I think that Disney will pay attention to how the ratings are affected by Punisher appearing on this show. If he's in one episode or if he has an arc, we'll see. Apparently some of you already know I'm watching the show with everybody else for this one so that I can experience it with the rest of you, because I don't want to be checked out. I want to still have some sense of hope. It's really burned me having seen White Lotus and Severance before, you guys. So I'm trying to try this different method with Daredevil. So I think there's a chance that these things will not continue because, I don't really see, Disney's not going to spend the money if they're not going to get any return for it. So is it superhero fatigue or lack of focus? Well, I think these are all factors. I think that there is too much superhero I've seen all of White Lotus, but the last 2 episodes, Mystic. Zeke, if you do a super chat while I'm in the middle of a story, you run the risk of me not being able to respond to it. And I've explained that before. I think there's a lack of superhero. So I think there's too much superhero fatigue. And then I also think there's a lack of focus, particularly in the MCU. I think a lot of people, before when these shows would debut, it's like you got to watch it or you're not going to be prepared for the next chapter. But now everybody knows that this is going to have no outcome in the rest of the MCU. It's just taking place in its own space. And so that doesn't give you any, I think not only does it mean you have to watch it, you don't have to jump to it, but I also think that it doesn't, make it exciting. CM says, do you think female LGBT appeal helped Agatha? For sure. I've told you that I think that group is very strong, and I think they're particularly strong on social media, just like Brazil. There are certain groups that can really push something on social media. I think that Daredevil is not that type of show. We'll talk about that in just a second. I do want to say that also some of you are also pointing out that there's too much content. There's just too much content right now. I have other friends that I've talked to, not only about this, but they're like, I'm already behind on Severance and White Lotus. I'm waiting before I start a new show. So there's that element, particularly with weekly. People with a binge, you can get it done. But with weekly, you're like, oh, how do I catch? And also, that's right, that's Invincible, Mika. That's right, Invincible's really hot right now. And I think particularly if you're watching Invincible, I think Daredevil seems really, really weak sauce. Because Invincible is such an incredible show this season. Then, as I said, I don't think Daredevil was designed to be a hit show. As I told you before, it started out being very network TV-like, and I think that you can still see that DNA deep in there. It was going to have a guest star of the week, a case of the week, things like that, and they retooled it because they were like, oh, this is not working. And so that's something that added to the expense of this show. And that Andrew, some people argue it does have beefcake, although I think there's not very much Daredevil in costume. I did talk to someone who told me that there's not, thank you, Sean, that Daredevil's not going to be back in costume for several episodes. I'm not going to spoil which episode it's going to be, but it's a long way away. It's just going to be a lot of Charlie Cox in a suit. And you're like, what? I didn't sign up for Charlie Cox in a suit. We were also complaining about how bad the VFX were when he was swinging around in that suit. But still, I'd rather have him in his Daredevil suit. I think it's crazy that he would not be in it for a large chunk of the season. But yeah, I don't think it's designed to be a hit show. I think it's a little boring. I think it drags. I think the pacing is off. And I think it doesn't give you anything to tweet about. Some people are very offended by that. They're like, how dare you say I should make my show to tweet? And it's like, do you want your show to be picked up for a second season? Tweeting is a result of people being excited about what they're watching. They're like, oh my God, I got to talk about it. It's so exciting. And that's why you want your show to do well on social media. Daredevil, you're just like, okay, all right, I'll see you next week, Matt Murdock. And I guess that's it. and I think that's an issue. I think I think I see less people tweeting about Severance as it gets more and more confusing. And I see some of the White Lotus tweets becoming more like, why is this show so slow? But, it's important. Then as for Marvel and the MCU, I really want to get a good look at the ratings for Daredevil, like through Nielsen. But they're in real trouble. Girl, you're in danger. I mean, this is a problem for them. I see happening to Marvel what happened to Star Wars. And that would be shocking if Disney managed to do it to not one but two franchises. I mean, that would just be incredible. And people thought Marvel was so strong it couldn't be killed. But yeah, DC, Zeke, it's happening to a number of franchises. Hollywood is saying audiences are very fickle these days. But I don't think that's necessarily true. I just think that there are more options out there. And I think that, therefore, that gives audiences the right to be able to watch what they feel is worth their time. And not only talking about other content, but video games, etc. So, yeah, I would agree, Dane. I think more discerning is a better way to put it. All right, so that's this story. Does anybody have any questions or comments about this story before we go to the next one? Danny, Wanda is extremely popular these days. I don't know what you're talking about. That was a big part of why Agatha did as well as it did. Oh, thank you, 80s model. Mika says people are used to binging Daredevil. Well, I guess. I think that, if it were more exciting, you wouldn't mind that it was weekly. Thanks, 303. Ian Michael says the fact that the traders can chart week to week and Marvel shows barely reach the top 10 in their final episodes is very telling. That's true. But I think people love drama. The traders, very popular on social media. Like it or not, it's interesting. Some of you wanted me to talk about Scarlett Johansson saying, I'm not going on social media. And Universal saying, do you want to go on Instagram maybe for this new movie? And I think that she didn't really understand the question. And I wish somebody had explained it to her. They said, Scarlett Johansson, we don't care how often you post. We really couldn't care less. The point is that that's a headline in and of itself, that Scarlett Johansson has joined Instagram to celebrate the release of Jurassic World Rebirth. That's the headline. And I think it's very clever. I think that was a good suggestion from Universal's PR department. And I feel bad enough that Scarlett Johansson turned it down, but I think it's even crazier that she talked about it publicly. Because then she was kind of negative I'm like, why do you want to say you don't want to hang out with everybody on social media? I just think that's it's just, you don't want to be negative. Dancing Doug 60 says, how did the Netflix Daredevil perform, Grace? Well, it lasted, it's just been such a long time now. It's like 10 years ago when it debuted. But it performed well enough that it ran for 3 seasons and spun off an entire universe. So, back in those days, Netflix didn't report ratings. So you had no idea how stuff performed. Greg says, I think a lot of people have abandoned Twitter. It is no longer as relevant. Well, that's why they suggested she go on Instagram. I think Twitter is still relevant. I disagree. I think that none of the competing services like Threads or Blue Sky have been able to compete, largely because they don't have a town hall quality to them, town square. I think Instagram does okay. TikTok obviously is huge. They could have asked her to join TikTok, and I can understand why she maybe wouldn't want to do that. Chadwick says, would rather not bring back more Netflix Defender cast if we're just going to bring them back to do episode 1 type stuff. Yeah, I would agree with that. Let's see here. And Zachary says, I feel like we always settle for less with Marvel. I was also talking to someone the other day, and they said that all the fan theories were better than whatever Marvel came up with. And that I think, you might be like, how dare the fan theories online and the YouTube theories ruin Marvel for us? But it's like, well, why doesn't Marvel just come up with better storytelling? It's having their own problems, but back in the day, DC and Warner Brothers content like The Last of Us was able to blow us out of the water. So it can be done. I don't know if ScarJo has a secret Instagram account. That's her business. Let's see here. Oh, Mystic says you can even limit comments to people you choose and follow on Instagram. Was she maybe worried about people? I mean, Scarlett Johansson's been put through the ringer. Like AI likes to really pick on her and stuff like that. But I mean, I think that this is what it's like being in a major. She was just in a bad mood when they caught her for this interview. She was like, Black Widow's dead, and I don't want to go on social media. And everyone's like, let's come back. Let's come back tomorrow and see if she's in a better mood. Her publicist was probably like, oh my God. Let's see. Zeke says the fact that you have to watch the Netflix seasons first to understand what's essentially Daredevil season 4 on a completely different streaming service, it's what's keeping people from Born Again. Also, I just don't think the show is particularly good. If it was like an amazing show, you'd be like, I better go back and watch the rest of Daredevil, or it really should be designed so that you could jump in. I mean, again, I don't know what's happening with the producers over at Marvel. There's nothing wrong with putting your business hat on, and thinking about it from the fan perspective and how it's going to perform on social media. What's the takeaway from each episode? These things are all very important, I saw a comment the other day when someone was like, they were talking about Mickey 17 and they were talking about the budget and the advertising budget and what it needs to break even. And I saw a number of people being like, it's disgusting that we're talking about movies this way. But Hollywood is a business. And when you're going to see with the Warner Brothers conversation that we're going to have in the last part of the stream, this is extremely important. Chadwick says, may have been mismanagement of expectations, but I feel incredibly burned about how much the return and overhaul was hyped up. Oh, you mean of Daredevil? Yeah, maybe. Ramonzilla says, Scorsese was partially correct about Marvel movies being an amusement park ride. The problem now is that the ride isn't as fun and doesn't make sense. That's a good point, Ramonzilla. I was just talking to someone about this the other day, and that Disney, in an effort to keep up with Universal, just keeps reskinning their rides. And so you're like, but I've been on this ride. You just stuck a different design on it, decorations. But Universal is developing totally new rides that people have never been on before, with even so far as going to invent new ride technology. And I think that's going to make a really big difference. But yeah, you have to constantly surprise your audience because you're in a very competitive atmosphere. All right, so let's get started, everybody. Let's get to the next story. Okay. Story number 2. Boop. Okay, this one's a tough one. This one's really tough. Okay, let's try our best to do this in a respectful manner. Oh, there was one image that I wanted to include. One second, I'll just have to get it on my phone. Okay. I am really shocked that this actor is even considering doing this role, considering what happened to poor Moses Ingram on Obi-Wan. Oh yeah, I didn't close the poll. Oh my goodness, 1 second. Are you watching Daredevil? 1 second, sorry. Okay. 35% of you are skipping this whole show? That's the most, oh my God. 25% of you watch it when it drops, 24% of you plan to watch it but haven't yet, and 14% of you watch it the week of release. So for those of you tuning in, that's right, Carlo, gasp is right. For those of you who are watching this live stream, only 39% of you are watching the show right now. That's terrifying. Whew! All right. So yes, poor Moses Ingram. This was devastating for this actress, and it was horrible. And she was a new character. And so I just think that, this actor, I'm not familiar with his work, but apparently he's very highly regarded, and those of you who do know him think he's really wonderful and talented. I don't know why he's doing this. I would be like, I really worry about, I think I just would not advise it for him. I'd just be like, I don't know what this is going to accomplish for your career. So yes, John Lithgow is the only cast member. Well, no deals are officially announced, but John Lithgow has said in interviews that he's decided to do this as the last chapter of his life. Woo! Pretty big deal. because, he has to do all 7 books. So, and he feels this is, this will define the last chapter of his career. So that deal, we'll see if it closes. But then also, just the other day, there was a headline on Friday that they're closing deals with Janet McTeer for Professor McGonagall, which is actually phenomenal casting. And then also, I'm not sure how to pronounce this actor's name. Is it Paapa Essiedu? He is nearing the deal to play Snape. Now, these had been rumors that had been circulating before, but it looks like they are getting close to actually having their deals closed. So this is the announcement that came out at the end of the day on Friday, and there was instant backlash. I saw one person say on social media, get ready to see levels of racism that you've never seen before. And I have to say, you didn't have to wait long. I saw some absolutely disgusting jokes and comments being made already on social media. I was shocked at how far people were going right out of the gate and had no shame. Again, I don't know why this actor is signing up for this, because, he could go and create a new character himself. Worse than the Acolyte Mystic? Yes. It's just so offensive. It was so bad. It's true. It's like Ariel, the Acolyte, and then this is going to be the next level. I was shocked at what I was seeing. I was shocked. To the degree that I feel like I don't even know if they should bother to make the show, because it's just going to be, it'll be Warner Brothers Acolyte if they continue in this direction. And they don't have to, which is what makes it so frustrating. They can tell a diverse Harry Potter story, as we're going to discuss, and they would not have to deal with any of this. That's right. Snow White's coming up fast. We'll probably talk about Snow White tomorrow. So what are the ramifications, let's say, of a new Snape? Okay? I'm going to talk about why they're doing this, the 303. I'm going to explain it. So the problems, as many people have pointed out, is that, you're not just race-bending a character, but in the context of the story, the way J.K. Rowling wrote it, it's going to add aspects to these incidents that I think are going to really twist them. So for instance, for most of the earlier films, the staff and the students are quite mean to Professor Snape. So you're like, now it looks like they're doing that because of his ethnicity. So that's going to make everybody at Hogwarts look like a racist. So that's going to be, it's such an odd choice. So that's pretty bad. And also, we don't know how many other characters they might be changing. So that just adds this element to it. Then, as some of you are pointing out, James and Lily Potter. You have the problem where you have a black man in love with a white woman to the point that it destroys his life, and she rejects him. Now it's going to look like maybe she rejected him because of that. Then James Potter is very mean to him and bullies him at school. So, James Potter shouldn't have been a bully, obviously, but it just adds like a really horrible, even worse element to it. And so I think and then he goes on to join Voldemort, but also while he's kind of working both sides, he's the one who kills Dumbledore. And so I've seen some people, even in the black community, say, we don't want this either because we don't want, that's not a great thing for our community either. It's just a bad situation. I've seen a couple of people who are in favor of it, but for the most part, nobody likes it. Nobody it's really weird. It's almost like Amelia Perez, where they're like, look what we're doing for you. And the group that you're doing it for says, stop. We don't want you to do it for us. It's horrible. We hate it. And you're making us really upset. But yet Hollywood keeps saying, no, you're going to love it. It's so important. And everyone's just, it's like the Karenist of behavior. All right, so Hollywood and diversity. Some of you are like, why is Hollywood doing this? Why? Well, it's interesting. Speaking of Warner Brothers, it was another movie called The Suicide Squad. Remember when this movie came out? Let me move this. The Suicide Squad came out a while ago. Wasn't it like 2016 or something at this point? Very long time ago. But very successful film out of the gate. Obviously people were like, this is horrible. But people liked the film. So one of the things that Warner Brothers took away from that is that having an extremely diverse cast was helpful to the movie. This was a very diverse cast, in many regards. It had black characters, Latino characters, Asian characters, and it did well. And so that was Hollywood's takeaway. Now, I think, you've seen some of that, some backlash to that. I think the box office goes different directions, okay? But I do feel that films and projects benefit very much so from having, especially if it's a 4-quadrant project and it's going to be very expensive. I think it demands, unless it's like, I don't know, I think House of the Dragon's doing a very nice job with that. I think we're in a world where people want to, what did Zeke say? Zeke, you're an interesting person, Zeke. Okay. So anyway, I think that the people have moved on, modern audiences. They like to see themselves reflected in the content that they're watching. Now, obviously, some people are very against that right now, but I think that, Harry Potter, it's interesting. Harry Potter's a little like Disney. I think both groups claim ownership of it. I think conservatives claim ownership of it, and I think liberals claim ownership of it, which is interesting. So anyway, I think that's very interesting. So I think, you need both groups to tune in to operate like the way you're supposed to. That's the way this kind of content succeeds. Just like that's the same problem that Disney's having. How do you, when these groups are so far apart these days, how do you appeal to both of them? Because that's how Disney and Harry Potter were such juggernauts back in the day. Everybody was able to actually be in the audience together, but they didn't fight back then. But yes, I do think that Hollywood should have diversity. I think it's important. Let's see here. Popcorn Roulette says, I feel like the main audience for Harry Potter is under 10 and might not care. But that's not true. I don't think that's true at all. For this to do well, you have to have adult Harry Potter fans tune in. I think Warner Brothers isn't going to spend all that money on a show that only appeals to 10-year-olds. It's not worth it. 10-year-olds don't make purchases. 10-year-olds don't buy a lot of merchandise. Why do you think Disney adults are so popular? Why do you think nostalgia is all the rage these days? Because, why do you think they're bringing back a Goofy movie? Because those people are adults now, and they have a lot of money to spend, and that's who watches. So I think adult fans are crucial to the success of this show. If anyone's going to get a 10-year-old to watch a new Harry Potter show, it would be their adult Harry Potter parent who's a fan. All right. They're not making a new Goofy movie, but Goofy is like everywhere these days. Disney brings him back to the theme parks, Max as well, because they know it's so popular with those fans who've now grown up. So yes, I think that diversity is important. Some people say they don't care if they're represented or not, but I think that's because they benefit from having so much representation. I think if they truly shifted in the direction that some people want to go in, I think people would be like, oh, this is pretty bad. I think there are always exceptions for true stories and things like that, but for the most part, you want to be acknowledged that you exist in that world. I think that's, I think people do care about that. Okay, I'm not going to poll that, Danny. Okay. Now, why aren't they doing a new story? Well, I feel it's because of Fantastic Beasts. Fantastic Beasts did very poorly. If you take a look at the Harry Potter box office, I'll be right back. Okay, if you take a look at the Harry Potter box office, you can see that back in the day, these movies were making upward of Azkaban fell a little short, which is interesting because that was a little bit more of an experimental film. But you can see these films are almost, for the most part, always close to $1 billion. And this was a long time ago. So that, look, Harry Potter ended just as the MCU was beginning. Isn't that interesting? Oh, I like that a lot. So yes, of course, Iron Man came out in 2008. And, the final Harry Potter movies were 2009, 2010. So these movies were making like close to $1 billion. And the last one in 2011 did make $1 billion. Now, Fantastic Beasts started out okay, but you can see it's dropped like a rock. The last Fantastic Beasts couldn't even get $500 million. And I think that's the reason that they are not telling an original story, which I think is unfortunate. I think an original story would have been the way to go. And I say that because of a little project called Hogwarts Legacy. Let's talk about Hogwarts Legacy. Hogwarts Legacy is a video game that came out, I think, 2 years ago at this point. Atmosphere, you've never seen a Harry Potter film? I rewatched them after Christmas, and it was wonderful. They are particularly good when you binge them. All right, so Hogwarts is a video game that came out, I think, in 2023, actually. Extremely successful. How successful was it? Well, it made $1 billion. Hogwarts Legacy, February 2023, sold 12 million units in 2 weeks and went on to sell 30 million units total, bringing in $1 billion in game sales. That's incredible. That is incredible. Why they aren't looking at this is beyond me. And if you take a look at the characters, it's wonderfully diverse. They have, just like the Suicide Squad movie, they have Black, Asian, and also Middle Eastern, Indian, characters from the East Asia and West Asia. And I think that's really great. I think it very much reflects modern England. I think that was the idea. By the way, this guy, this Slytherin guy, he's so cool. I love his look. This guy looks amazing. I'm like, why is he not in a show? I mean, everybody would love this guy. So I'm just surprised that they're not doing Hogwarts Legacy. And then the show could go on forever because you would always have new students entering the class. I think it's a clear slam dunk, I think Warner Brothers is going to come to greatly regret redoing the Harry Potter shows. And, we'll see if Essiedu actually signs his deal. I would say go have lunch with Moses Ingram and ask her how she feels after the fact, having done it. What did Billy say? Here I go. Billy says, Paapa is an incredible actor. His ethnicity doesn't make a difference to the story. But it does. We just talked about how it makes a huge difference to the story. We just talked about how it changes the context of the things that happen to Snape and the things that Snape does. It does change. I believe that it changes the context. All right, so any questions or comments about this story? It is a hot topic, Danny. I feel I covered it as best I could. I know some people are like, why don't they hire Adam Driver? Adam Driver is never going to do a TV series. I mean, I don't think he already did Star Wars. He doesn't need any more drama in his life. I think we have to see how the rest of the cast turns out, what the trailers look like. I have to see I think it's too early days to see if the show will do well. That's right, Dancing Dog 60. Fast and Furious is also very successful, or at least it was. Jeremiah says it would work if they had race-bent another teacher, like Dumbledore. I think, but then a lot of people are upset about not having more black straight male characters. So that would, I think, become another issue. It's very difficult today. It's difficult to navigate today's audiences. They're very fragmented, very vocal, but it can be done. But you just need very savvy people who are at the helm, and I think, and people who want to be at the helm. And it's frustrating that they are not interested in it. Roberto says, in today's climate, I think everyone feels shoehorned into too many people. Even the Odyssey is falling into this trap. Oh, yeah, if anyone can escape it, it's Christopher Nolan. Finn says, Harry Potter fans showing they're not cool, was never going to watch the show, but I still would be curious from afar if they choose. Well, you were never going to watch it. But if they chose to, if you watched an original story. That's right, Ben 10. Whoever they cast as Harry Potter will be crucial. Although I can't see anybody doing a better job than Daniel Radcliffe. Let's see here. Will says, even if the Snape casting occurs, which I don't like, I will still watch because of the Harry Potter universe. Everyone, the diehard fans are going to give it a whirl, but, that's not enough to support a show like this. Zeke says, Grace, there's literally a trans character in Hogwarts Legacy, so I don't know why Warner Brothers isn't adapting Hogwarts Legacy into a movie or TV series. Yeah, it's ridiculous. Thanks, Tony. Thank you so much. You're very sweet. Thank you, Tony. Degaitai says, what's your favorite Harry Potter movie? It's been a while now since I watched the movies. I'm hoping to maybe find time to do the video. I think I just like the experience of watching all of them and how they evolved as a story. They really work best as one giant story. Billy says, oh, thanks. I'm glad. I do have a new stylist. He's so talented and he's done a great job. I was just there on Friday for a refresh. Okay, I think we're ready for the next story. This next one is nuts. Okay. All right, get ready for a super business discussion. All right, here we go. Let me get my arrow. Because we got a lot of talking points on this one. Okay. Where'd my arrow go? Okay. Story number 3. Boom, baby. Ho, 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 ho. This is a great one. It's so businessy. I love it. Okay, so Warner Brothers film drama. What an article this was. So this came from Puck News. Oh, you can't see me. This came from Puck News, but more importantly, where's my arrow? It came from Miss Kim Masters. Now, the reason I want to talk about that is Kim Masters, for about over a decade, was one of the top people at The Hollywood Reporter. And so the fact that she left The Hollywood Reporter, which, by the way, all the major trades are owned by the same company, Penske Media. Deadline, Hollywood Reporter, and Variety are all owned by the same company, and they're all having a little bit of a problem. Now, Puck News was funded by, as we talked about, founded by Matt Belloni. Matt Belloni, Mr. Belloni, Matt Belloni co-founded Puck News when he was fired as the editor-in-chief at The Hollywood Reporter a couple of years ago. And he's really built it, along with his podcast, On the Town, to be quite successful. In fact, somebody has a cameo in the studio with Seth Rogen coming up in one of the later episodes. And the fact that they chose Matt Belloni and showcased his podcast was a really big deal. They've even also launched a 4-year consideration for award season to compete with Deadline, which is the one that typically does that. So it's a big deal. So he poached Kim Masters away from The Hollywood Reporter to go and now work for Puck News. Now, the only problem with Puck, and they have some great stories over there, but the only problem is they're behind a paywall. It's pronounced Belloni. It still sounds like Baloney. Okay, or Belloni. Belloni sounds a little bit better. Matt Belloni. That sounds a little better. Okay, but I kind of think it's funny with Baloney. All right. Whatever it is, he is doing quite well. So the problem is that Puck News is behind a paywall. It's $17 a month or $150. Did I say 15? I'm sorry, that's $150. That should be a zero. $150 for a year. That is very expensive. They're getting really big stories though now, so I would hope they maybe would get an ad sales team because that's very expensive. And that's just for one news service. They cover all topics. They don't just do entertainment. They do tech, politics, everything. But that's still an extreme, that's a lot of money. I agree with Wanda's attorney. I don't subscribe the 303. They said they give me one article for free, and that's how I got to read this article. I almost subscribed because I wanted to support other entertainment journalists, but I was like, that's so much money. It was really hard for me. If it had been less, I subscribe to the New York Times. I pay for that, but this is really expensive. It was a lot. Maybe. I think they're incredible reporters, and Kim Masters is going to deliver 2 stories a month, and this one's beautiful. So maybe it would be worth it. If she gets another good story, I'll pay for it. Because, I want to support, but I wish they'd have a different price. I wish you could subscribe just to a section. That would be great. I don't care about any of their other news stories. I only want to read their entertainment news stories. So if they could give me a lower price point just to read those articles, I would, it is a tax write-off for me. But it's a big ask. Okay. So let's talk about this amazing article. All right, so Mike DeLuca and Pam Abdi. That's these people right here. There's Pam, and there's Mike, and there's Zazie. Zazie looks so bad in this article. My God. All right, so Mike DeLuca and Pam Abdi, they were brought in to be the new heads of Warner Brothers Film. And it's not going well, so they systematically took down every single movie almost in Warner Brothers' slate that's coming up. So let's go over it. So for Joker 2, they said obviously, even though Pam and Mike did not greenlight this film, they oversaw the film. And they allowed Todd Phillips to get away without doing a test screening. And they said, somebody in the article from Hollywood Insider said that to not do a test screening for a $200 million movie is malpractice. And that they never should have agreed to that. So that's pretty amazing. Then, Mickey 17. They said Mickey 17 is a disaster. It's going to probably lose $100 million for the studio. They said it did not test well. They tested this movie. People didn't like it. They said that Warner Brothers did their own cut that tested 10 points higher. But yet Bong Joon-ho had final cut and refused to go with that, saying the Parasite didn't test well either, and so he knew what he was doing. He doesn't know what he's doing. It has a bad audience score across the board, and not even a good critic score at this point. So I think that's really a problem. I think this is the issue with giving someone final cut. So they take you down with them. Then they even hit Sinners. Oh my God, I can't believe they hit Sinners so hard. So they said Sinners is having some problems. They said, first of all, that Warner Brothers never should have agreed to let Ryan Coogler get the rights back to the film after 25 years. Because they said a very big part of a movie's success or a studio head's success is building up the library for things that they can sell. They can sell for years, forever. They can sell that movie as part of packages and on their streaming services. So if they give up the rights to that movie, it's a big problem. I think all of us have been scratching our heads saying, this might look like a good movie, and I think I'm always interested in what Ryan Coogler is going to do, but I think a lot of us are scratching our heads as to how he thinks this is going to be a long-term franchise. We're all like, I don't see it. I don't see it, Ryan. I'm open to having my eyes opened. I think it's going to be a great film, but I just don't see it was, when it was pitched and sold to Warner Brothers, I think a lot of us felt it was going to be like a new Avatar or something. So I think it just seems smaller than we had thought. But yes, they said that, they said Ryan Coogler is more open to discussions. He's more open he is doing test screenings. He is taking that into account. However, they said that this movie was expensive, although Ryan Coogler, to be fair, did cover the overages with his own money. But they said it needs to open with 50 to 60 million to even have a chance of being profitable. And they said they do not think that it's probably going to be able to do that, particularly because they don't think it's scary enough. It's not like a Nosferatu. And also, I think a lot of us are like, isn't this show what was the name of that show with Jonathan Majors? Lovecraft Country. I think a lot of us are like, this is Lovecraft Country. So yeah, so that's how much it has to open with. Then they talked about the Leonardo DiCaprio, Paul Thomas Anderson movie, and this was really bad. They said that an agent, Paul Thomas Anderson's agent, is the one who talked David Zaslav into hiring Mike and Pam, but yet Mike and Pam lost a lot of money from P.T. Anderson with his MGM film, that pizza movie, that leftover pizza movie or whatever. They said that movie lost so much money that when Amazon looked in the books when they bought MGM, they were shocked. They were like, oh my God, I can't believe it's even worse than we thought. So Mike DeLuca and Pam Abdi, what do you know? They hired P.T. Anderson again. Oh, licorice pizza, thank you. Leftover pizza. They hired P.T. Anderson again, and they're worried he's going to have another flop. And they said, of course, there's DiCaprio, but DiCaprio's last two movies haven't done particularly well, so they're kind of nervous. So that's pretty bad. Then there's The Bride. That is Maggie Gyllenhaal's new movie, which stars Christian Bale and Jessie Buckley. And they said they don't know why anybody would give Maggie Gyllenhaal $100 million. That's her budget. They said it's absolutely ridiculous to give such an inexperienced filmmaker for her second movie a $100 million budget. And they said the movie is not testing particularly well either. They said, I I'm sorry if you're lagging a little bit. I can't help on that. I'm sorry. Try reloading it. But they said it's too art house. They said it's not going to have a wide appeal. So they're kind of nervous about it. Yeah, that's $100 million for that movie before they pay to advertise it. Now let's talk about it. So this is like, Kim Masters just took down the entire slate. I mean, like, oh my God, some of these movies we had high hopes for, but now they all look bad. Now you're just like, oh my God, like what's going to happen over there? Well, what they think might happen is that Mike DeLuca and Pam Abdi might be fired. So let's talk, we're going to get to that. But yes, everybody also said, what about Josh Goldstein? Josh Goldstein, let's get a look at this guy because we're talking about him so much. Here he is. That's Josh Goldstein. Josh Goldstein did a wonderful job as the head of Warner Brothers publicity for the last few years and is regarded as being the one responsible for Dune's success and for Barbie's success. He ran those ad campaigns, and also he's the one who launched Superman. He was responsible for that December trailer drop, and then he was fired. And even more shocking was that Josh Goldstein had a contract. He had just signed a 3-year deal, and I guess they bought him out of it. So in Hollywood or in any business, even if you have a contract, apparently you can be fired. That's incredible to me. Yes, this guy was fired. He was let go, and he's mulling his options, and he's considering being an advisor on the ad campaign for Greta Gerwig. He's going to go back with Greta Gerwig since he made her Barbie a hit, or helped make it a hit. I mean, I think it was a great movie too. But maybe he feels that he might help promote Narnia. That would be very fortunate for Gerwig and Netflix if he were to agree to do that. It would not be cheap, but I would spend that money. If he's open to doing that, I would. If I were Netflix, I'd be like, thank the heavens. I mean, that would be fantastic. I'm shocked that this guy's in the wind. I can't believe, and so is everybody who works at Warner Brothers. Now, this article is particularly bad because it made David Zaslav look like a rube. The article said that when he showed up in Tinseltown with very little experience and only doing cheap reality shows for Discovery, everybody looked at him and said, we can get a lot of money out of this guy. And so they said he had such stars in his eyes that he was signing deals that no person in their right mind would agree to. Giving, he's the one who got Tom Cruise over there, but now that movie's also having problems. That's the one that John Goodman is currently injured on and has caused a delay. A rube, Mr. Andrews, is someone who's very gullible, like a country bumpkin, right? Like the person you can sell a bridge to. So they said, he's being sweet-talked. Agents are getting him to hire people that he shouldn't hire. He's giving out ridiculous budgets and paydays, and that he just is everyone's taking advantage of him and intentionally taking advantage of him. It's very, very embarrassing. But it does explain a lot, Eric, as to why he would hire any of these people. Many of us wondered why on earth he would hire James Gunn and Peter Safran to run DC. I think, the jury's still out on how James Gunn's going to do, but he isn't a pick that many of us would done, not only because, I think, it's not a good idea to hire a creative to run a franchise, but also because I think he's a little too similar to Zack Snyder. I don't think they've really, I think it created a lot of the same problems. A lot of us felt that Zaslav had been talked into it, or that he met with James Gunn and thought he was a cool guy and didn't do any of his research. It's a little bit like the guy who was the head of Sony who watched Bullet Train and said, who's this Aaron Taylor Johnson guy? He's a future star, and nobody in the room raised their hand and say, well, actually, sir, Hollywood's been trying to make this guy a star for years now, and audiences just aren't interested. But that guy, he wouldn't believe it. And, he's paid the price with, we'll see. I'm sure 28 Days Later will still do well. But nobody wants to see Aaron Taylor Johnson. He's simply not somebody who can sell tickets. So the article made David Zaslav look really bad. So they also said that he was considering making Peter Safran the head of Warner Brothers Films. That is the dumbest, stupidest, hopefully David Zaslav will read the article. It's just more of the same. If you look at Peter Safran's resume of movies that he's made, he is not the person to run Warner Brothers of all places. Warner Brothers used to be a prestige studio. It used to be, as they said, the Tiffany of the Tiffany of studios. Just look at their slate. Just look at their library of film. Peter Safran does like B movies, and that's like being generous. He's not going to be the guy who gets Scorsese and all these, maybe woo Christopher Nolan back. Although Christopher Nolan ain't never coming back. But I just think that I just couldn't think of a worse choice. And it's such a lazy choice. And also, I think DC has so many problems. If DC was going great, I'd be like, well, maybe. But it's just a horrible choice. All right, so let's talk about Superman. So the article said that Superman has to save the day. Talk about needing to be the superhero. They said that Superman, if this does not do well, Warner Brothers is sunk. So they need James Gunn's Superman to be successful. And I think, as I said, it has to at least match the Batman's box office. It has to have a 7 in front of it. Maybe they could get away with a 6, but I think they'd be severely disappointed if it didn't at least have a 7 in front of it. So they're very nervous about Superman. So much so that if you think about this headline, talking about advisors, they wouldn't hire Ricky Strauss, but he's going to advise Warner Brothers himself. He's going to advise Warner Brothers on the release of Superman. And I think it's pretty interesting, if you look at when this announcement was, this came after the Super Bowl mess-up. Superman had Super Bowl in its hands. Superman could have been the big movie of the day, and they dropped the ball so bad. They had nothing for the Crypto Puppy Bowl, and then they had that ridiculous Guy Gardner tease, which made everybody just groan and cringe. But because Disney went early and Universal went early, and they, the Jurassic and the Fantastic Four trailers dropped before the game, Superman could have dominated. That could have been Superman's day, but it wasn't. And so I think that's why they hired Ricky Strauss. They were like, advertising isn't as easy as it looks, and perhaps we should not have fired Josh Goldstein. That's right, Ben 10. They also skipped CCXP, and they said they're not going to Comic-Con. Don't forget, Warner Brothers actually also has no money, so they can't afford to buy anything. The reason they advertised at the Puppy Bowl was because that's their own thing, and it doesn't cost any money to advertise on it. So they don't have enough money at Warner Brothers to, it's like, good luck, Ricky Strauss. You have to advertise a movie with, no money. And also, why would you hire the guy who was the advertising genius behind Apple TV, when nobody can tell you what's even on Apple TV? So I don't think their advertising's very good. So we'll see. I think, advertising is a big part because Superman is stuck between Jurassic World Rebirth and the Fantastic Four. It's going to be really tough for them. And I told you that early test screenings, I don't think that necessarily the movie's bad, but the movie's having a tonal issue. And that it's a more fun movie, let's say, than I think people are used to seeing from DC. They wanted a Marvel approach to DC, and it looks like they're getting it. Unless there are some changes, James Gunn is going in and punching some things up a little bit. But I don't know if that approach, we'll have to see. I think it's hard to tell. I prefer darker DC stories, but there are people who've always said they like the lighter ones and they want it to be lighter. So I'm like, okay, let's see it. And, James Gunn can do dark. Some of that Guardians of the Galaxy 3 stuff was very dark. But Wanda's Attorney Saturday morning cartoon is a good comparison because the whole reason that Superman's wearing these granny panties is because David Cornsweet said he wanted to not be intimidating, or whatever that means, to little kids. So that's why he put on these giant underpants. And you're like, who cares? I don't think anybody, you couldn't have gotten sexier than Henry Cavill's Man of Steel. And I don't think that was ever an issue. Nobody was like, not hide the kid's eyes. It's crazy. So they wanted him to look like an old school wrestler. He doesn't even look like a modern wrestler. I'm pretty sure that I remember that quote, don't, go look for it. Don't hold me, because that one's off the cuff. But I think that's what he said. He wanted Superman not to be intimidating. It's just, I don't understand it. Okay. So Superman is very, very important. Superman is extremely important to the success of Warner Brothers. So they're saying that if Superman does not succeed, it's going to get swallowed up like Fox. They think, I told you that the name of the game from day one was to eventually flip this studio. That Zazie was only getting it, he was only getting it in shape to sell it because AT&T still owns a lot of stock. So they want to flip it. And I think they want to flip it no matter what. The question is just how much they can get for it. Because everybody there is major shareholders. They would benefit considerably from the shareholder, from a big sale. So they said that it's going to get, yeah, that's right, Mystic. Right now, you'd be like, you got to pay me for this. All right, so who can afford it? I think the only person who could buy it would be maybe Universal. And that's why I also have the note, yes, please. I think that Warner Brothers is in such a mess right now that I think the fandom would be thrilled if somebody were to purchase the studio. I think people would just be so happy to see somebody else get DC. Disney can't buy it, Cosmics. They just don't have the bandwidth anymore. And also, look what they did to Star Wars and Marvel. So I don't think people are going to want it. I think that, Universal already has the Harry Potter elements in their theme parks. Wouldn't they love to own the movies as well? I think there's an extremely strong chance. Universal has always been interested in purchasing Warner Brothers. But recently they've spent most of their money on Epic Universe, which I think was a good investment. But yeah, and I agree with Lloyd Lester. I would like to see Universal purchase it into a hard reboot of DC. I said from day one that if James Gunn didn't do a hard reboot, it would haunt him. And just like I said that the recut of Justice League would always haunt that movie, and I was right. Not doing a hard reboot will always haunt James Gunn's DC, and it was a mistake that he didn't do it. We'll see, but I think that this is tough. We'll see what happens. I think there's a very good chance that that Universal will pick it up. I can't think of any other studio that would want to buy it. I mean, I guess maybe, as you said, a streaming service could buy it. It's funny. The other day, my dad was asking, who owns Netflix? And I said, Netflix owns Netflix. And he goes, okay, yeah, but who owns Netflix? And I said, no, they own themselves. No, there's no parent company. And it just goes to show you how unusual it is these days not to have a parent company. And I think that is beneficial to Netflix, and that they, they can do whatever they want to some degree. Anish says, Grace, can you share what exactly happened with Zach? No, I cannot. It's not my story to tell. Dancing Dog 60 says, sad to see the Legacy Studios vanish, though. It is very sad. But, where were the people protecting those studios? It's very sad to think that Warner Brothers would not exist. I mean, it's sad enough that Fox doesn't exist. I remember going to the Fox lot before it was purchased. It was a magical place. Billy said, you've always said if they don't focus on the Trinity in a reboot, it wouldn't work. That's right. I don't know why James Gunn's wasting his time with all these characters, these B and C level characters. Oh, but Marvel did it. But these are not Iron Man and Thor level characters. Sockley says, what if Superman makes $1 billion? Well, that would be wonderful. That would be, I'd be first in line to congratulate him. Because I'd be like, yay, it's not fun covering franchises that are failing. But if it makes $1 billion, I think that, Zazie will get more money for the company. I really do think that he's going to sell it. Zeke says, it'd be funny if Edward Norton's Hulk and Eric Bana's Hulk exist in the same studio as Superman. Universal's never going to do anything with those characters, though. Chris says, so California Six Flags has DC Hero Ride, so can Universal Studios theme park do a team up? Well, no, they would probably either revoke that license, or because there's not heavy theming in Six Flags, or they just allow it. But they probably, that's the great thing. Universal says they're looking for constant ways to expand aggressively. Imagine if they could give us a freaking DC park. I mean, I just can't tell you how happy I would be. There is a Warner Brothers park, I believe, in Dubai with a DC area. But I think people would just be over the moon if we could get the DC characters into the Universal parks. I mean, that would be huge. That would be, we're in a world of IP, and Warner Brothers has major IP that they're not doing anything with. If Universal bought Warner Brothers, they could build a whole nother park with DC, Mortal Kombat, Game of Thrones. I mean, that would just be amazing. Okay. All right, let's do the Q&A. That was quite the story. Whew, you need a cigarette after that story. It was so good. Okay. Q&A for 10 minutes. That's right, Barbie Land. Oh, that would be wonderful if they did a Barbie Land. Hey, Sean. It's nice to see you here. Okay, so 10 minutes. So till 4:44. Oh, yeah. Booyah. Oh, Degai time. Glad you enjoyed our discussion on that one. That was a good one. Sockley says F4 is going to bomb. I think there's a chance. I'm nervous about it. I don't smoke 303. It was just a joke. I'm a clean living type of person. I don't drink and I don't smoke. Zeke says legally Universal could make more Hulk. Oh, they could, but they're never going to. Billy says there was a comic artist talking about being screwed by. Oh, yes, I saw that. The comic book so there's a comic book artist named Dustin Nguyen. I don't remember Nguyen. I don't remember how to pronounce his last name. He's been a long time working comic book artist, and he said today that he wasn't going to work for Marvel anymore because Marvel was just lowballing him in their fees. And then he just absolutely refused to work for a company that was making so much money off of comic books and yet wasn't allowing the people who made the comic books to experience in any of that success. And I think that's a very valid argument. I think the comic book business has never been worse. I still read comic books every week, but it gets harder and harder. My stack gets smaller and smaller. And I think, the comic book industry is also run really oddly. It is extremely unprofessional. Nobody has agents or representation. Everybody has to do it for themselves. Hiring is totally based on who you know. And that's why there's so much abuse within the comic book industry. The fact that has not been cleaned up and made more professional continues to really surprise me. I think because nobody wants to spend any money on it, and that would cost money. Danny, I'm going to cover Andor out of the gate, and we'll see how it performs. It's so slow right now, I'll be like, sure, I'll cover Andor. Paul says, is there any truth to the rumor that Gunn took Clayface from Reeves? No. I don't know for sure. I think James Gunn and Matt Reeves are getting along quite well. I think that Matt Reeves' delay is purely a personal issue, that it's his own business, but it's a serious one that we should be respectful of. I do think there's a question as to whether or not someone else should direct if it's going to slow him down that much. But we're getting to the point where it's just a year and we're, let's see. Irony says, isn't it fascinating how Netflix, after major companies trying the streaming strategy, still reigns supreme? They do. They really do. I think because they're the Coca-Cola of streaming. Chandler says, I feel like Universal puts out just as much crap as Warner Brothers. Well, yeah. The movie business is a tough business. But I think the problem is that Universal has some real highlights. Super Mario Brothers, Wicked. We'll see how to Train Your Dragon does. Whereas Warner Brothers is really desperate for a win these days. Marduk, the controversial thing has not happened yet. It's in episode 5, and the fallout for it is episode 6. But episode 5, which is this coming weekend, is the one that gets really zany. So, we'll see how everybody reacts. Adam Sphere says, do you regret reading the entire Invincible run? No, I don't. I also forgot most of it, and then I reread it the other day. No, not really. It takes so long for Invincible to come out. Sarah says, what is the problem with Apple TV? They have great shows, but they are not big on streaming like Netflix and Max. Well, even Max has a problem. They're not very big on streaming either, actually. I think Apple TV, I think it's just one streaming service too many. I think it's great that they partnered with Prime Video so that you can get their shows kind of like in a package through their interface. If you're trying to think of something, I can't recommend Apple TV more. Not only do they have Severance, although that's kind of wonky, but that's not turning out so good. But they have The Studio coming up, which is an incredible show. And then also, my review will come out this week. And then also they have a John Hamm show coming up in April called Your Friends and Neighbors. And I've watched the first 6 episodes of that, and that's a fantastic show. And there's also a big back library of content you might not have seen yet if you're new to Apple. So I think they're worth every penny. I think they're a great streaming service, and I wish that they were. I just think, Apple has tons of money. I think Apple felt that the fact that it kind of is like comes with your phone, at least for free for the first little bit, or Apple TV or whatever, or your Apple product, that it would take care of itself. But it's not. So I think they have to invest in advertising. They did a good job with the Severance Season 2 launch with that really cool stunt in Grand Central. Ace, I thought The Last of Us Season 2 trailer looked fun. I think, it's weird. They've chopped up the game so much that I'm very curious to see how they're able to spread it out the way they plan to. Grace, do you suspect that Bob Iger is intentionally sabotaging these franchises? No, I do not think that's the case, Zeke. CM says, Warner Brothers used to have a great relationship with talent like Margot Robbie and Timothée Chalamet. They do. Those people still have deals at Warner Brothers. Warner Brothers paid a lot of money for Margot Robbie's Wuthering Heights. They still have relationships with those two people. Justin's also not having a good time with comic books these days. Let's see here. Billy says, any Wicked for Good tea? I told you I think that trailer is coming up in, let's just say, April. Early April. I really am excited for Interview with the Vampire Season 3. It can't get here fast enough. And then Wanda's Attorney. I am enjoying Housewives. Is tonight the season finale? I'm excited for that. And then Peyton says, hey, Grace, thoughts on The Last of Us Season 2 trailer? Oh, I'm not going to be doing a breakdown. You'll notice that almost nobody covered that trailer because Max has a very aggressive policy for covering their promotional stuff. So I'll be covering the show, but I think a lot of people will cover the show, but almost nobody these days covers Max's promotional material because of that policy. It's the same one the Paramount Plus has, which is why nobody ever talks about Star Trek shows. Just Blaze Disney. I'm not sure what's going on with the Lilo and Stitch film. I'm curious if they're going to put a trailer out next week to play in front of Snow White, but they might not want Lilo and Stitch associated with Snow White. I think if I were them, I would hold that trailer for after Snow White opens to change the conversation. Like the Tuesday or the Monday after Snow White opens, then I drop Lilo and Stitch and be like, let's move on. Let's see. Alex says, I was told by Steve Orlando at a convention that the only way into comics is to do it independently. That's very true, and then, they don't have like a way to climb the ladder. I mean, they used to have other things that you could do, but like I got into comics like with some of the lower publishers, but a lot of those have gone away, so that opportunity doesn't exist anymore. And if you're interested in going into comics, by the way, you should always go to comic book conventions because it's a business of relationships. But be careful because it's very toxic, so be very careful with yourself. Mr. Andrew says, so what's the best for us to see Warner Brothers being bought by Universal? Superman does well or doesn't? I don't even know if it matters that much at this point. I guess, I don't know. I'm not sure. It's really hard because Warner Brothers still has, they had opportunities to purchase it before. And then Nick says, hey, Grace, would it be possible for Netflix to purchase Warner Brothers? They could, but I don't think they have any interest in owning a studio. Popcorn Roulette, I don't think the John Hamm show is based on that Neil LaBute movie. I'd have to look into it. Boo, 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 boo. Elite, I don't know if I'm going to review The Electric State. I don't think so. They didn't send out screeners, and I have a lot of other stuff that I'm doing. Probably not. And then Lucas says, if Warner Brothers gets swallowed up, what happens to those deals? Thank you, Helen. Those deals would stay, they'd probably stay with the new place. I would think. And then Lucas says, are you worried that the new Thunderbolts indie-style trailers are misleading? I doubt that it's, I don't know. I really like Beef. But I don't know. I'm worried what that movie has up its sleeve. They've showed so little. Is it because that's all there is, or are they hiding a lot? I'm very curious. And then Cian says, after this article and test screenings, what do you think will be the biggest movie for 2025? Oh, so bleak. So bleak right now. Maybe Wicked for Good? Let me go back and see your super chat if I can find it. Sam, I did enter that. Okay. Okay, let's see. Maybe it'll be Superman. It's weird. The Superman, Jurassic World could be big. The Superman trailer was such a big deal in December that Avatar will probably be the biggest movie of the year. That's why you guys are bringing up Avatar. Yeah, Avatar, probably Zootopia. I think the holiday season. But it's weird to me that Superman started off so well with that trailer launch. And that was Josh Goldstein. And then they just lost all of that. Okay, last two questions, then I gotta go. So, the Brandon V says, anyone but Zaslav in charge? Zazzy's not working out. Zeke says there was a 2011 film adaptation of Wuthering Heights where Heathcliff, but now him being whitewashed. Well, let's see. I don't have any faith in the Wuthering Heights film. I think Margot Robbie's too old for the role. And I love Margot Robbie now, but I just don't think it's a good idea. And then Sam says, what are your theories on who bites the bullet in the White Lotus season finale? Oh, I don't know. I actually, even though I've seen 6 episodes, I have no clue as to who it might be. And then Ice says, would you try to fix Marvel by keeping characters theatrical or streaming only? Yes, I would. I do think that is something I would consider doing, as I've said before. I don't even know if franchises should be in both spaces. I don't know if Marvel should have any Disney Plus content. I think Disney Plus should create its own franchises, would be my recommendation. I think Mandalorian and Grogu will be a big test to see if people are willing to see that in theaters or if they feel it's a Disney Plus movie. All right, everybody, I'll see you late tonight for Daredevil coverage. Bye-bye, bye-bye-bye, bye-bye.